Hello, good evening and welcome to PM Express. My name is Nana Ansakwa. Well, we all know the adage of pouring water into a basket, a futile task for sure. According to Send Ghana, this will not be a bad description for government investment into agriculture. Over the past 5 years, government has invested an average of 10% of GDP, but the growth for the sector has only been 5.5%, and the contribution to GDP has only dwindled year in and year out. Smallholder farmers are the biggest victim of these ill-executed plans and programs to boost the agri sector. The study by Send Ghana showed that 64% of farmers in the past year suffered food deficiency and went at least a month without meeting their food needs. It might not be the food crisis asserted by the MP for Kwadaso, Dr. Owusu Afriye Akoto, but Send Ghana has some dire warning for government to set up if smallholder farmers are to survive. With me in the studio is the country director for Send Ghana, George Osei Bimpe. George, welcome.
Thank you, Nana.
Very good. And then later we'll be joined on the phone by Dr. Ahmed Yakubu Al-Hassan, Deputy Minister Food of Agriculture. And we have a video that we will show you on the screen before we continue.
The GM technology allows bioscientists to create varieties of crops such as corn, rice, cowpea, and the rest that have higher yields per acreage and at the same time resistant to pests and other vagaries which otherwise would have constrained their cultivation. Proponents believe GM is the way to fight hunger and ensure food security through increased crop productivity where conventional breeding is limited. Critics have, however, expressed worry that such experiments could get out of hand and may result in the production of a crop variety that may cause destruction rather than good.
The GMO technology is said that it will take a gene from one plant or organism. GMOs have been found to cause serious health problems in rats. That maize crop was able to resist pest attack. However, it brought health implications when they were testing it on rats.
The National Biosafety Committee, however, disagrees. Deputy Director, Biosafety and Biodiversity of the Ministry of Environment, Science and Technology, Eric Amaning Okori, explains it is for this reason that trials will first take place in confined fields. According to him, though approval has been given, the trials will not start until the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research's Savannah Agriculture Research Institute and the
GM production, and that's another investment that governments should look at it. That's a whole area on it together as to the moral aspect of it, the immoral aspect of it. People have argued that man is trying to play God, or is this science being advanced? And indeed, if you open the floodgate, where do people stop? However, today we are not looking at this aspect of agriculture. We are talking about smallholder farmers, and that's why my friend George is here with me. But before I start, George, let's look at Send Ghana. Just tell me what Send Ghana does before we go fledge into the smallholder farmer. What does Send Ghana do?
Okay, thank you very much. Send Ghana is an affiliate of Send West Africa. We are currently present in Liberia and Sierra Leone. So we have Send Liberia, Send Sierra Leone. We have been in existence since August 1998. So we are celebrating our 15th anniversary this year.
Okay.
Basically, we are a policy research and advocacy organizations, and we are interested in monitoring how government proper interventions are actually impacting on the targeted, population. So, we're talking about sectors such as agriculture and trade, health sector, education, and of course, we are interested in also monitoring, how SADA budgets are being, SADA budget basically.
Okay.
So we will come back to some of this issue later in our lives. So basically, we are a research and an advocacy organization that is interested in monitoring poor interventions.
George, I'm glad I'm talking to you.
I'm so happy to be here. I'm so happy to be here.
George, any country that has too much of their population in the agri sector, that country is poor. So why are we encouraging smallholder farmers? Because clearly then we are encouraging poverty.
Now you are saying that because some people are poor, we should lead them to die, poor. That is the other side. That is the other side of the argument.
No, I'm saying that we have to elevate them from smallholder.
How do you do that?
Educate them. So they become service industry, IT boys, insurance boys, bankers.
And that is where you get it wrong. Nana, we are talking about 40% of Ghanaians, and these people have not had opportunity of education that you have. As you can ask, that is because somehow we did. Through no fault of theirs, they did not have education. Now, even if you want to put aside these people, are you saying that those people who have the so-called education are now in the IT or industries as you are talking about? We do not have those job avenues. So the most important thing or the most important strategy that you want to look at, especially if you are thinking of getting people out of poverty, is to look at the spectrum of the economic activity where you find majority of these people. The point is that we have about 40% of Ghanaians in agriculture. Of that 70% of them are smallholder farmers. How do you graduate smallholder farmers into medium scale farmers? Some will then, when they find themselves in that second, they have accumulated capital. Some will obviously find it necessary to go into trade. Others will find it, will have the opportunity to give their children education so that their children do not repeat that cycle. No, so you have to go to the basis.
I agree with what you're saying, but I think that we are sort of locking them into that area. Look, you go to Farmers' Day, and we are still handing over cutlasses and langa-langa.
We lock them so long as we continue to make bad investment decisions. So long as we continue to do poor targeting. That is why we lock them. We seem to be providing so much support, but that is not the case. That is not the case. So don't let us, in the first place, don't let us assume that we are providing enough support so that we are pampering them. No. If we are providing the support across the entire value chain, and we are seeing that lives are being turned around, and we see that these people are putting their children in schools, they are able to afford. My parents took me to a school through cocoa and farming activity. My mother never had the kind of education that I had.
You see, I'm not saying that farming per se is a bad thing. All I'm saying is that we seem to think that, well, you live outside of Accra, you live outside of Kumasi, Takoradi, and Cape Coast. So all you need is a hole, an acre or maximum 2 acres. There you go. Plant cassava and just let's encourage you to do that.
And that is the
guy plants
approach.
the cassava. There's no roads for him to bring the cassava to the main town. And if he brings the cassava to the main town, the Makola woman wants to buy it for nothing.
So Nana, you are
according to your
question.
statistics, then the guy goes through the whole year without food. So I think that there should be another way rather than encouraging this.
Nana, you see that you have answered the question for me because we seem not to have the complement, the full complement of the services that farmers need in this country, so as to graduate them. Because if you are only interested in addressing production side, without addressing processing, without addressing marketing, that is where we seem to have problem. I'm afraid to say that at the moment, all our interventions are geared towards production. With that, for example, even looking at nutrition education, so that it surprises you that we are recording such huge number of people who suffer some food deficiency at some point in the year. And that is because, for example, in a season, they make so much. Where do they store it? What is the link between market and the point of production? George, and this is where we have gone wrong.
Let me make my argument this way.
Yeah.
When the colonial masters were leaving, literally, when Kwame Nkrumah fought and he was being handed over Ghana, that the African can rule his own and blah blah blah, all those big talk.
Yeah.
And I need to find that note, and I've read it, where the guy who was in charge of agriculture wrote that The Ghanaian was farming with a hoe and a cutlass, and it was not enough to feed them. And very soon the population will grow and they will starve. And this was in 1957. I'm checking my date here, and we are in 2013 still saying that, yes, carry on, go on, use your hoe and cutlass and try and weed yourself out of, out of poverty.
Yeah.
So
Nana, in the first place, we at least from the point of view of our research, that's not what we...
It's been 50 years.
That is not what we are saying. What we are saying is that we have to make the right investment decision, because if somebody has to stop the usage of cutlass, hoe, as you talk about, somebody has to make that investment decision to make sure that that person is provided with fertilizer, tractor services. We are not saying that that person should be bought a tractor, but we should find a way. And the government's idea of providing mechanization centers and so on, and tractor on high purchase is a good idea. But to what extent are we making investment in that? So much that it will be accessible to as many of our farmers as possible. And that is the basis, that is the kind of question that, the kind of issue that this research interrogates. So we are not saying that we should pamper people to continue with the old ways. We are saying that we should move from the old ways and modernize agriculture. In doing that, somebody has to make the investment decision. And that is what we are saying.
The reality on the ground is, I have my 1 acre here. Unaccessible roads and rivers and big trees. You have your 2 acres, another probably a mile away. Antiama has hairs, another mile away from there. Yeah. So even if the tractor was a helicopter and that it would fly from the skies and come to the farm, it's still very, very impractical.
So, the issue of tractor is just one example. Because we are talking about addressing the entire value chain. If you are addressing the entire value chain, you are looking at infrastructure, for example. You are looking at agriculture extension education. You are looking at processing, how you encourage people to go into agro-processing. That is one issue that you want to look at. And you don't just get people out of vacuum to get up one day to say that we are going to agro-processing. Somebody has to somehow support people with entrepreneurial skills who are interested in going into agro-processing. And that is the basis of the argument we are making. That if you are doing well in terms of pushing so much resources into the sector, make sure that it is qualitative investment that you are making rather than just the figures. As it is now, I'm afraid to say that we have done well in terms of even surpassing our own commitment we made in as far back as 2003. That is when African government said that they were going to invest at least 10% of national budgetary resources in the sector. We have surpassed that. We are talking about 11.7%. Ironically, this is a time that we are scoring lesser and lesser growth rate in the sector. If you put in 10% of national, total national revenue, you are expected to get at least 6% growth, in the sector. But
if you put in how much?
10% of national revenue,
you're supposed to get about 6%.
6%. Unfortunately, at the time that we are putting in so much, we are recording 0.8%. So it comes back to the issue that I have said, that if you make the right investment decision, if you do proper targeting, if you address the entire value chain, that is where you get people even attracted in the field. That is where you get people graduating from smallholder agriculture to medium scale and possibly larger scale, at which time we will have a departure into various sectors of the economy. That's how the dynamic is supposed to play out. But if we do not get the basics right, I'm afraid we will be talking about this in the next 50 years to come if we do not make the right investment decision. It comes to investment decision, and investment decision.
Wow. Women apparently, don't get a fair share of the cake as men would get.
Yeah.
Be it fertilizer, be it tractor service, be it, and one area where I hear, women really struggle is tuber farming.
Yeah.
I find tuber farming very, very masculine. There's a lot of physical work involved in tuber farming. Mm-hmm. Not that I'm saying that women are not physically strong, but why don't you leave the men to it? Why do we necessarily have to say, by all means, woman, go on also plant the same tube of yam as, Kweku did or as Yao did. Why aren't we pushing unnecessarily?
You will be right in your what I will call your patriarchal argument if there was nothing called technology. Okay. If there was nothing called modernization of agriculture. Okay. If you are talking about cassava plantation, people are not using their hoes and cutlasses any longer. So this is an area
From where?
We have seen this at least in the, not necessarily in the Bourgeoisie area, but in many other countries. I cannot cite the case in point, but even in the certain part of northern Ghana, some people are using tractor to get those things out of to get the tuber out of the soil. This is very simple technology that you do, and luckily, and I'm not advertising for any company. There's a particular brewery company in Ghana that is now buying cassava. So you go to Bourgeoisie and talk to Bourgeoisie people. They are very happy because they are now found ready market for their produce. This company is turning into a type of drink that everybody is drinking. I have tried it and it's so fantastic. This is something that is made from cassava. And so, for example, if you can just use plowing tools to engage in cassava cultivation, and even if we assume that because the person is a farmer, that person necessarily have to do the tilling and everything. If you can empower a woman to be economically sound, can the woman hire the services of people who will help her in this kind of business? And especially if you want to also target poverty.
George, she's only got 1 acre. She's only got 2 acres. She hasn't got enough
she's got
to go around
acres. She's got
to
2
hire
acres.
people.
No, she's got 2 acres because she does not have access to the right support services. I mean, let's look at this scenario. Some district assemblies in this country have procured tractors. The tractors are sitting in their premises. Some have broken down. They are complaining of money to repair them. Some are supposed to, the essence of the tractors is supposed to make some of these things available to the farmers in their communities. To what extent are the assemblies themselves translating national development agenda at the level that they find themselves? It will amaze you to find out that some of these assemblies that do have agriculture as predominant economic activity have as minimal level, as minimal a figure as 14% of their budget lines accounting for agriculture-related activities. Isn't it a paradox that an assembly that has agriculture, as a mainstay of that area, small economy,
and is not 14%
putting 14%? Why is it that they will spend all their monies on something that is not related to agriculture? If your aim is to, or if there were not to be that disconnect between national development agenda and what the assemblies are planning. So somehow you talk about the kind of even institutional collaboration among the various ministries that coordinate the activities of national ministries and for example district assemblies. So that district assembly can make it a point that this year we are providing tractors at vantage points in our community, and that is going for subsidized rate for farmers, so that woman that you are talking about will not be working on an acre, but will be working on probably 10 acres.
We'll come back to it. 14% of total budget going into agriculture, even though the predominant occupation there is agriculture. Is it because when they put in the money, they are not getting the results? But we'll come back and talk to George. You're watching PM Express. Stay tuned. Hello, welcome back to PM Express. George was just mentioning that, there's a district that puts in 14% of its total budget into agriculture, even though predominantly the activity within the area is agriculture. It tells you how much incentive, or it tells you how much interest they have towards the sector. But then that brings me to the larger thing which George mentioned earlier. That's the Maputo Convention, Maputo Declaration, said that we should put in about 10% by 2010.
Yes.
And now we're doing about 11.7. However, the returns are 0.8. Now I'm saying, whose duty, if the state is now putting the money, whose duty to make sure that the tomatoes grew or the apples grew or they ended up on the street? Because the state has put in the money, so they are clean. They have it on paper. If Mr. Maputo ever turned up and said, hey, according to my convention, you were supposed to put in 10%, know what, I put in 11%. But then where is the returns? 0.8%, absolutely abysmal. George, the state has put in the money. The smallholder farmer has not produced or not brought his fruits or somehow. What more should the state do?
Okay, so let me reiterate the point that I made earlier, that government ought to be commended for having put in that money.
Good.
Having said that, the question is disaggregate that quantum and find out how much of this is going into investment. And that is the most important thing, because investment is what is supposed to translate into underground benefit for farmers. So let me just, if you do simple disaggregation of that big money, you realize that around a little over 54 or 57% of that goes into recurrent expenditure.
So it's not going into anything new.
It's going to pay the officers, it's going to pay the office stationery or whatever. So this is not something that goes, directly into the land. Now, of the remaining 46 or 43% that we can talk about, there is what we call development investment and non-development investment.
Okay.
So let's assume that, and let me explain. The non-development investment is used for the purchase of, say, air conditioning, Land Cruiser, pickups, motorbikes, and so on and so forth. So you see that though this may support service provision somehow, but it's still not going to the land. So how much are we left with at the end of the day?
Okay.
So it is not just about meeting an international convention. That one we can all go to bed and clap and say that we have done well. But how qualitative is the investment? If you increase it and everything goes to recurrent expenditure, it's better you probably shift the money to another sector, so that we will say that we are not doing well because we are not investing. Does it surprise you that in recent past we have seen consistent decline in agriculture's contribution to GDP? Even though investment is going up. Does it surprise you that at the point that when we're making below 10%, we were scoring close to 6%. But now we have surpassed it, we are scoring below 6%. So it is not just about meeting an international commitment. And this is what we are saying, that we need to all sit down as a country and say that we are not going to just increase the investment threshold for the sake of recurrent, shoring up recurrent side of our budget.
George, I am a bit skeptical about this 0.8%, because these are Greek and they are statistics. Oh, we calculated the oil and then we calculated this and then we took the cocoa out and then we put the palm oil in. Are these just simply based on the same figures that once upon a time we were getting 6%, but now we are getting 0.8%?
Unless they come to tell us otherwise. I know there are other explanations that they can go into that. But I am not the one who manufactured this. And this is not Senghana's data.
Wow.
Yeah, this is not Senghana's data. So unless someone else has an alternative, we are not. And we can check, even from the recent budget that was read in Parliament, this was the same figure that was used. So if we have an alternative figure, that is fine, because we cannot impose standard on government. It is government's own standard that we use to measure government's performance. And so for this one, we do not even have to dispute that, because this is not the creation of Senghana. We have picked it and we have accordingly, as convention demands, credited wherever we pick that information from in our research. So that is something that we don't. I think that if, for example, the farmer to extension service, agents ratio is something abysmal, we need to ask ourselves whether we want to increase productivity at the time that we are not investing in the provision of extension service agents.
This is one question that I really would have loved to put to Dr. Ahmed Yakubu Al-Hassan, Deputy Minister for food and agriculture. His phone is we're not getting through to him on phone, but we're still trying, and as soon as we get to him, I want to find out. And the question that I want to put him, even though he's not here, I'll put you, because if we were at 6% and then we are down to 0.8, how soon?
Well, not exactly 6%. I mean, we got to 5.3 2010.
2010.
Yeah,
3 years down the line, we are down to 0.8. So how soon?
And at that time, we
putting in less money.
10.5. So not significant change. But how come that we have dropped from 5.3 to 0?
Could it have been bad weather, bad rains, dry weather?
At that time, we had not scaled up our irrigation scheme. As we speak, we are still under 2% of arable land. We are talking about 2% of that under irrigation. So our agriculture is largely rain-fed. And so far as I can recall,
the conditions are pretty much the same.
Yeah, conditions have not changed substantially. No, we can't talk about that. And so and one of the explanations is that the increase went to the recurrent side of the budget. And if we, like I have explained, that the recurrent side of the budget does not translate necessarily into on-the-ground benefit for farmers. And if you have, targeting issues, especially when, let's also put on record that what we saw in our study was that those beneficiaries of government, programs, i.e. the Root and Tuber program, the Northern Rural Growth Program, and the Youth in Agriculture Program, have some substantial access to support services, which means that they were better off than those that were not on that.
George, we'll come back to it. But what I want to find out is that, so you are saying that in another 3 years, at this rate, in another 3 years, we will run out of food?
No, that's not. We do not have any projection on that.
So let's go to
we will not be able to.
Food security.
Yeah.
How severe it is right now, or in the...
Nana, we talked to 750 people across the sampled areas. What is coming out is that 64% of them are telling us that at least at some point in time they do not have the full nutritional needs. They do not meet their full nutritional requirement, i.e., they suffer 1 to 2 months in terms of food deficiency. So there is a problem, and it's not the case that they don't get enough. Many of them reported that they do get enough yield. However, everything goes because there's glut. So where do you store it? But if there was even a marketing mechanism to ensure that they get, they receive value for money in terms of their productivity, the farm gate prices are good. They can save, they can accumulate capital. That is where we can take people out of that bucket of smallholder farmers. Some can find trading. Some can find some other things to do.
Are you suggesting we go to the food distribution days?
Not necessarily. But you see, the idea about the buffer stock company was a good idea. We are not so sure that if it had, the momentum it gathered in the past is still running, because some of the farmers reported that they did not even know their whereabouts. They do not know whether they continue to buy from them and so on. So they may be buying.
I like that continue to know, because I tend to find that there's a lot of ignorance in the system.
Exactly.
Where, the farmer doesn't know that there's a tractor available for him, there's fertilizer available. Yeah. What programs are there now? I mean, what are the programs there for the smallholder farmer? What programs?
Well, I must say that some of our civil society organizations are, doing our best in sensitizing farmers on availability of some of these support services. But to what extent? What is our coverage? This is supposed to be done especially by the Extension Division of the Ministry of Food and Agriculture, but they are under-resourced in terms of capital injection and in terms of even human resource. They do not have the people. So you just post one person who does not even have fuel the money to buy fuel in his or her motorbike, so that he can go to the nook and cranny of that particular district and offer that kind of education to farmers. So it doesn't surprise us that many of them are reporting that they do not even know that their district assemblies are offering tractor services at subsidized rate, they tend to go to the open market, which is certainly higher than. So that higher cost turn them away from even using tractor services, so that they will just go and farm on their 1 or 2 acre land that you make reference to frequently. And so even and that comes to the assembly itself. If you have procured tractor services solely to promote agricultural activities in your district, you do not have to assume that because the tractor is sitting in your premises, somebody from 100 kilometers away or 60 kilometers away will get to know it automatically. Somehow, some people have to use simple, and I want to be theoretical here. There are simple theories we call, central place theory. Know the population threshold that you want to serve, put the tractor at their door service. And so that it doesn't have to be at the premise where the DC sees it every day and says that, and instruct, go and fetch water, use the tanker to do this. And that's what they are doing. So at the end of the day, we are underutilizing some of these facilities that could have gone into helping, farmers scale up production, get more, sell more, make more money, take themselves out of poverty, find something more else to do, or even graduate to a different level of the scale.
Okay, George, so, admittedly, the tractor is packed, but there's fertilizer, where it's subsidized, the government has imported, which, smallholder farmers have access to. So why?
Yeah, it is very important here again. It is
why
very
are we
important.
down to 0.8 if we have fertilizer?
Yeah, it is very important here again to also commend government, at least for the commitment to continue with the tractor, fertilizer subsidy program. But the point is that if I were in the northern region and you brought me fertilizer in, say, November, knowing that I am not using irrigation, of what use would that be? I am not saying that is the exact time that came up. The point I am making is that timeliness in delivery, in delivering some of these services is as important as the commitment to invest. So that once you make that commitment to invest, make sure that the services get to the farmer at the right time. Somehow we need to find a way to make sure that even fertilizer, gets to farmers before the farming season begins, so that they are short of the quantity they have, and if they are aided by extension service officers, they are able to project even the end the produce, or even how much land they can work on, and so on and so forth. These are some of the little things that we can do, because so long as we have made that commitment to subsidize fertilizer, we have to make sure that we get the most. Let me put it this way: the highest return from that investment. But if we do not send it on time, you end up not getting the returns. And so at the end of the day, they are applying the fertilizer. They do not even have education on how to apply it. So you cannot apply fertilizer and leave the issue of extension education on fertilizer application out. People get it. How do they apply it? And that is why it is important that you synchronize the delivery of services and invest equally in all of them to make sure that you have enough people, they have whatever it takes, all the facilities they need to provide extension education, so that the money you are throwing into fertilizer subsidy does not go down the drain.
George, one thing is that the majority of the workforce in Ghana by demography population, it's probably the majority of them between 18 and probably 25 or even 35, and that's where the strength is. That's the youth who can really go and till the land. Now, ever since we are growing up, if you do anything wrong, he's a farmer, a foom. You go to school, you speak. In class, you're given a cutlass, go and weed. You watch a Nigerian movie or Ghana movie, somebody coming in a tattered and has a cutlass coming up. There is nothing that attracts you to that industry, because automatically everything you see there is poor. You don't see the likes of the Kwabena Darkos, the Ibrahims and their big poultry farms for you to think that, so farming could be, this beautiful. We don't sell it. So why are we now desperately trying to put people in smallholds. I think those are probably in there for survival and not for love. They're not there because they actually love it. They're probably in there because I have to survive. We haven't glorified the industry.
I wish that a farmer had made, you were a farmer to make this kind of point. Because the farmers themselves see dignity in their type of labor.
No, I don't want to use dignity. I'm just saying that it is not attractive.
Yeah, it is not attractive, but I'll come back to that.
Not to the farmer, but to the youth.
Yeah, good. So let's for example, take the issue of the youth in agriculture program.
They don't want to go and farm. They also want to drive in the big cars that you see that the city boys bring to the funeral every day.
This is a program that is very laudable. I must say that. And here again, unfortunately, it is only addressing the production side. Targeting, as we find it, has been poor. We have around, in some of the districts, around 76% of beneficiaries being in men and 24 of them being in women. Okay, we will need to interrogate that further. But the problem with it is that it goes on to say that anybody who feels like assessing that kind of program can just do that, so that we were recording people as old as 65 years, calling themselves or classifying themselves as people who belong to the youth category. 65.
Maybe
65.
Maybe he feels fit.
Somehow it tells you that probably we are not serious about truly attracting the youth in this sector. And I think that we are missing a good opportunity to solve the unemployment problem that we have here. Because if you, for example, we have so many of our youth who are reading agriculture, but they don't want to go there. Can we target these people, for example, and make sure that we give them the right, the right what we call farm tools? Also link them to industries. There are people who are graduating from biochemistry or whatever who can go into food processing. It doesn't have to be big.
George, we're going to go for a break and then we're going to come back and join. Whenever did you buy a newspaper and then they said, a graduate of agriculture needed to work on a big poultry farm, or somebody in agriculture needed to work here. Some of the incentives is one BMW or one four-wheel drive, an air-conditioned house. When did you ever see something like that to encourage us to go in there? We'll be right back and George would answer my questions. Welcome back to PM Express. Now, some comments on Facebook. Mohammed Mukadas says, the agricultural sector of the country should be well equipped with sophisticated machinery and professionals. And then I have Bonti Benjamin. We must implement industrial and attractive policies that will encourage more people to engage in agribusiness to enhance our production level than making our oil the focal point of growth of the nation without making any meaningful impact in our development. Let's get our priorities right as people. And then I have Emmanuel Asankinaba. I think policymakers and implementers have challenges making smallholder farmers self-supporting. The dependency of these farmers on others for resources make them vulnerable. They borrow at a cutthroat interest and are largely dependent on unpredictable rainfall patterns. Programs must eventually benefit the farmer, not the unscrupulous businessman and politician. And the show goes on. But before, let me remind you that Blue Rose Limited, a leading real estate developer in Africa with affordable housing, presents to you Shelter for All. With as low as 50,000 Ghana cedis, you can get a 2-bedroom house from Blue Rose Limited. And if you want further information, this is the number to call, 020-202-9622 or 030-2241-459. Again, staying with real estate, another giant in the real estate business, Reggie Manuel Estate. Rajmalan Estates, with over 20 years unbeatable record at Katamanso, has a 2 to 3 bedroom houses with expansion possibilities set within gated communities with a superb infrastructure, 24/7 security, street light, landscape area, the social amenities including sports complex, educational facilities, shopping centers and health facilities. Experience the new phase of urban living at Balloon Gate Apartment, Kwabinya, where Regiman Gray has brought to bear the expertise and unparalleled hallmark in designing 2-bedroom apartment with 2 bathrooms. For more information, do give them a call on 020-222-9916 or 020-222-9918. George, back to you. Pick up a newspaper. Hello. Nana Ansakwa Farms want an energetic young man to come and be a farm manager. Incentives, 2-bedroom house, air conditioned, nice 4-wheel drive, and probably a girlfriend to go with it. You never get that.
Yeah.
It's always a marketing here or marketing manager there or data man here or this there. So automatically all these expertise and all these big brains or all these high-tech guys will opt for marketing, even though they'll finish and be unemployed, but at least they have a chance of getting some employment. So the system itself has cut us into two. There's a smallholder farmer who we don't care about. We just put in money there, which a bigger chunk of it goes into 4-wheel drives and air conditioners and luxuries. And then there's the other half that don't see any incentive of going into farming. Yeah. So where do we go? I mean, with the employment-wise, there's never work in the farming industry or agri industry.
Yeah. Thank you very much. When you talk to policymakers, they will tell you that farming is business. Mm-hmm. And I agree totally with that.
Sure.
But it is not just saying that farming is business and leaving it to grow on its own. It doesn't happen that way. Even the big businesses that we find today have come from some point, and at some point in their lives, somebody has made some decision in a way that created, an enabling environment for that business to thrive. So if we see agri as a business, then let us create the same business environment for agri to, thrive. You see that policies of agriculture, there's a disconnect between policies of agriculture and even industry. Why do we always talk about the need to industrialize, and we are not talking about starting with agro-processing? Can you imagine that? And I always buy it, plantain chips. Mm-hmm. And since I started buying it in traffic, it has always been the same. Somebody sits in his or her room and, just peels it and fries it and put it in that thing and just cook it. But somehow, somebody has to make some decision to even invest in R&D. R&D in a way that will create, will develop these plantain chips that we can, that can meet the standard elsewhere. And we'll talk about phytosanitary, conditions that, the European Union has. We can do that to meet that kind of market so that we create a lot of demand for plantain. Once people are assured that their plantain is in high demand, people will go there and do it. You and I will even go for loan and do bigger farms. In that case, we'll be able to put an advert that we want. I want a soil engineer. I want an extension officer. I want a crop, whatever they call it, a crop, agronomist. I want that because I'll be able to pay that person probably bigger than a bank can pay. What we will be doing? We'll only be planting, plantain on a large scale. And everybody,
I'll come back. You mentioned bank.
Yeah.
You mentioned bank. All too soon we hear funding. Mm. And what are our banks' contribution to the agri sector?
I must say that some of the banks, I will not mention their names here, otherwise I'll be doing their work for them. Some of them, I think it's just political talk, have said that they will give, they have earmarked certain amount of money. And here again, what are they looking at? They are looking at the already saturated export market. And our core is saturated because we are not adding it into the traditional export commodities. And this simple plantain thing that I talked about, have we thought about it? Do we know the multiplier effect that this can have? And if, for example, you look at the estate at Eastern region where they plant what called banana, the kind of returns they make yearly, and if you can replicate that kind of experience in plantain, that will certainly be helpful. But we cannot. I must say that the banks are failing us because they are not interested in helping people who will start from the crust.
Why don't the banks get confidence in agric? Because you tend to find that farmers will always say, I don't have access to capital. I don't have access to capital. What is it that they don't have confidence in? That maybe the farm might flood and you lose your crops?
Yeah, we have talked, I think I have talked about the need to develop the entire value chain. Mm-hmm. One of the things that is important there is even the issue of crop insurance. Mm-hmm. If we can get people who are business-minded to think around the issue of crop insurance so that the banks know that the crop that the farmers have taken their monies, whatever, and are investing in have been insured. You see that the risk thing that we talked about that deters so many banks is then minimized. So like I said, Nana, it's not just about putting money or making so much.
That's the whole revolution. That's the whole revolution in agriculture,
and that is what we need. If we really want to stop the talk about cassava, whole cutlass and these things, we need to do that. And it seems that we are addressing the problem in a piecemeal fashion, and that is what is not helping us. Let us see what it takes to do everything right, and let us do everything at the same time. Don't touch the head and leave the tail, only to go and see that the tail has even outgrown, the head in terms of size. And it seems that this kind of approach is not going to help us. And certainly, I would go for a situation where we address the entire value chain. The entire value chain meaning issue of finance, insurance, processing. How do we also fashion out an industrial policy that will encourage people, open people's mind's eye to see that there is sense in investing in agro-processing. Give them tax holidays instead of giving it to mining companies that are destroying our arable lands, instead of giving it to so-called galamsey operators that are destroying our water bodies. What have we done about agriculture that can employ all these boys who are going into galamsey because they no longer find agriculture attractive? You cannot just talk about youth in agriculture without addressing the other issues that I have already talked about, because some of the youth are frustrated. They have gone there, they have been supported, they have had access to fertilizer, they are getting high yields. Unfortunately, they are not getting good prices for their produce, so work done, zero.
Wow. George, how can we make sure that this is just not a rhetoric and we can have a call to action, that we can move and at least see this wheel grinding? Because if you talk to anybody, they're going to say, yep, I put in the money.
Yeah.
How can we make sure that this wheel is grinding, that we don't put out, 0.8% return after putting in, 11% of total revenue?
I think that what we are asking for is a revolution in the agriculture industry. That is one thing that we want to make clear. And the fact that you have given us this opportunity to be on this platform, to begin the discussion, to begin the talking, is also one. And from our side, we have taken upon ourselves, to follow through. And this is, for example, the second time we are doing this in 3 years. So we will consistently monitor how government is doing it. And of course, we have a very, proactive minister, I must admit. And so we are hoping that in the not too distant future, we can begin to see how we can do things differently from the way we have been doing things in the past. That is the only way out. Otherwise, we better stop talking about reducing unemployment rate. And that is going to be a big problem.
George, thank you very much. Guys, you've been watching PM Express. Now, we live in a tropical country. We are blessed with sunshine, probably, 12 months in a year. We're blessed with rains. But then we can't just depend on the rain. There's so many waters around us that we have to go into irrigation. Now, many years ago, when Lee Kuan Yew visited Kwame Nkrumah, he was introduced to a professor, and he asked the professor, "What do you do?" And he says, "I was a professor in linguistics." He nearly fell off his chair, thinking, you have all these greens around you, and you travel to abroad to learn linguistics? Well, what are you doing with the potential? Now, 50 years over down the line, we cannot still make the same mistake. George has mentioned agro-processing. Simple things like canning tomatoes, juicing fruits. How many times do we drive by, see a pile of mangoes, a pile of tomatoes, or oranges just rotting by the side of the road? The call of action is now. My name is Nana Ansakwa, and I want to say thank you to George for coming to have this wonderful discussion. And I'm sure tomorrow we'll be up again with an intriguing conversation. Thank you for watching.